Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Anugrah. Welcome back again in my video. On this occasion, I would like to explain you guys about structuralism and post-structuralism. Okay, maybe let's move to my explanation. Okay. Structuralism is a way of approaching text and practice that is derived from the theoretical work of the Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure. Its principal exponent are French Louis Althusser in Marxist theory, Roland Barthes in literary and culture study, Michel Foucault in philosophy and history, Jacques Lacan in psychoanalysis, Claude Levi-Strauss in anthropology, and Pierre Macquarie in literary theory. Their work is often very different and at times very difficult. What unites this author is the influence of Saussure and the use of a particular vocabulary drawn from his work. It is as well then to start our exploration with a consideration of his work in linguistics. This is best approach by examining a number of key concepts. Okay, I would like to show you about Ferdinand de Saussure, Claude Levi-Strauss, Will Reich and the American Western, and Roland Barthes, a mythologist. Okay, this is Ferdinand de Saussure. Saussure divides language into two component part. When I write the word cat, it produces the inscription cat, but also the concept or mental image, also image of a cat, a four-legged. Fellenkratzer, he calls the first the signifier and the second the signified, together like two sides of a coin or a sheet of paper, they make up the sign. According to Saussure, meaning is also made in a process of combination and selection, horizontally along the syntagmatic axis and vertically along the paradigmatic axis. For example, the sentence, Miriam made chicken broth today, is meaningful through the accumulation of its different parts. Miriam made chicken broth and today. Its meaning is complete only once the final word is spoken or inscribed. Saussure called this process the syntagmatic axis of language. Structuralism takes two basic ideas from Saussure's work. First, concern with the underlying relation of text and practice, the grammar that makes meaning possible. Second, the view that meaning is always the result of in the interplay of relationship of selection and combination made possible by the underlying structure. Okay, next, Claude Lewis, Will Reich, and the American Western. Claude Levi-Strauss, 1968, used Saussure to help him discover the unconscious foundation of the culture of so-called primitive societies. He analyzes cooking, manner, modes of dress, aesthetic activity, and other form of cultural and social practice as analogous to system of language. He claims that beneath the vast heterogeneity of myths, there can be discovered an homogeneous structure. In short, he argues the individual myths are example of parallel articulation of an underlying structure of language. By understanding the structure, we should be able to truly understand the meaning. Myths, Levi-Strauss argues, work like language, they comprise individual myths, analogous to individual units of language, morpheme and phonem. Like morphemes and panometames take on meaning only when combined in particular pattern. Seen in this way, the anthropologist task is to discover the underlying grammar, the rules, and regulation that make it possible for myths to be meaningful. He also observed that myths are structured uh, in terms of binary oppositions, dividing the word into mutually exclusive categories produce meaning culture or nature, man or woman, black or uh, white, sorry, good or bad, us or them. For example, in Sequence and Society, will write 1975 used Levi Strauss structuralist methodology to analyze the Hollywood Western. He argues that much of the narrative power of the Western is derived from its structure of binary opposition. However, Wright differs from Levi-Strauss in that his concern is not to reveal a mental structure, but to show how the myths of a society through their structure communicate conceptual order to the member of the society. In short, while Levi-Strauss' primary concern is the structure of the human mind, Wright's focus is on the way Western present a symbolically simple but remarkable deep conceptualization of American society beliefs. He contended that the Western has evolved through three stage: classic, a variation he calls vengeance, transition time, and professional transition time Western, which Wright claimed provides a bridge between the classic Western, the form that dominates the 1930 years, the 1940 years, professional Western, and the professional Western, the form that dominate the 1960 years and 70 years. The binary opposition, the reverse, and we see the hero outside society struggling against a strong but corrupt and corrupting civilization. Many of the narrative functions are also inverted. Instead of being outside the society, the hero begins as fellow member of the society, but the society is revealed to be the real villain in opposition to the hero and those outside society and civilization. In his support for an eventual alignment with those outside society and civilization, he himself crosses from inside to outside, and civilization himself goes from inside to outside and from civilization to wilderness. But in the end, the society is too strong for those outside it, who are ultimately powerless against its force. The best they can do is escape to the wilderness. Okay, next. Roland Barthes' mythologies. Roland Barthes' early work on popular culture is concerned with the process of signification, the mechanism by which meaning are produced and put into circulation. Mythologies 1973 is a collection of essays on French popular culture. Mythologies conclude with the important theoretical essay Meet Today. In the essay, Barthes outlines a semiological model of for reading popular culture. He takes Saussures schema of signifier or signified is sign and adds to it a second level of signification. As we note early, the signifier cat produced the signified cat, a four-legged feline creature. Barthes argues that this indicates only primary signification. He claimed that it is the level of secondary signification or connotation that meat is produced for consumption. By meats, He means ideology understood as body of ideas and practice, which by actively promoting the value and interests of dominant groups in society, and the prevailing structure of power. To understand this aspect of his argument, we need to understand the polysemic nature of science. Barthes would see this as an example of the fixing of new connotation in the production of myth, the production of ideology. He argues that all forms of signification can be shown to operate in this way. His most famous example of the working of secondary signification is taken from the cover of the French magazine Paris Match. He begins his analysis by establishing that the primary level of signification consists of signifier, uh, pages of color and figuration. This produced the signified a black soldier saluting the French flag. Okay. Next to post-structuralism. Post-structuralism rejects the idea of underlying structure upon which meaning can rest secure and guaranteed. Meaning is always in process. What we call the meaning of a text is only ever a momentary stop in continuing flow of interpretation following interpretations. Saussure, as we have not posited a language as consisting of the relationship between the signifier, the signified, and the sign. The theories of post-structuralism suggest that the situation is more complex than this signifier do not produce signifieds. They produce more signifiers. Meaning as a result is a very unstable thing. In the date of the order, the now post-structuralism, Barthes 1977 insists that a text is a multi-dimensional space in which a variety of writings, none of them original, blend and clash. The text is a tissue of quotations drawn from the innumerable center of culture. Only a reader can bring a temporary unity to a text, unlike the work that can be seen lying in apparent completion on library shelves and in bookshops. The text is experienced only in an activity of production. A text is a work seen as inseparable from the active process of its many readings. Okay, let's to know about Jacques Derrida, discourse and power, Michel Foucault, the panoptic machine. Okay, this is Jacques Derrida and discourse and power, Michel Foucault. Okay, first we go to Jacques Derrida. Post-structuralism is virtually synonymous with the work of Jacques Derrida. The sign, as we have not already, is for Saussure made meaningful by its location in system of difference. Derrida adds to this the notion the meaning is also always different, never fully present, always both absent and present, of defining popular. Derrida 1973 has invented a new word to describe the divided nature of the sign, difference meaning both to differ and to differ. Okay, for Derrida, the binary opposition, so important to structuralism, is never a simple structural relation. It is always a relation of power in which one term is in opposition of the dominance with regard to the to other. Moreover, the dominance of one over the other, or a matter of say parity or privilege, is not something that arises naturally out of the relationship, but something that is produced in the way the relationship is constructed. Black and white, it could be argued, exist in a binary opposition, one always existing as the absent other when one of the term is defined. But it is not difficult to see how in many powerful discourses white is the positive term, holding priority and privilege over a black. For example, television historian David Strachey comments on BBC Two's Newsnight program in 13 August 2011. The DES advertisement I discussed earlier contained what the rate 1978 would call a violent heresy. A couple good girl who is interested in electromagnetism, genetics, and Carlos Dickens, maybe, and bad girl who prefer music, clothes, and boys. Okay, next to discourse and power, Michael Foucault. One of the primary concerns of Michael Foucault is the relationship between knowledge and power and how this relationship operates within discourse and discursive formation. Foucault's concept of discourse is similar to Althusser's idea of the problematic. Discourses work in three ways: they enable, they constrain, and they constitute. As Foucault in 1989 explains, discourses are practices that systematically from the object of which they speak. Language, for example, is discourse. It enables me to speak. It constrains what I can say. It constitutes me as a speaking subject. An example is situate and produce my subjectivity. I know myself in language. I think in language. I talk to myself in language. Academic disciplines are also discourse, like language. They enable, constrain, and constitute. In this way, discourse produce subject position. We are invited to Otsupi, a member of a language community, student of film, netball player. Discourse, therefore, are social practice in which we engage. They are like social script. We perform consciously and unconsciously. What we think of as experience is always experienced in or of a particular discourse. Moreover, what we think of as ourselves is the internalization of multiplicity of discourse. In other words, all the things we are enabled, constrained, and constitute in discourses. Power produces reality through discourse. It produces the truth we live by. Each society has its own regime of truth. Its general politics of truth, that is the type of discourse, it a chap that makes function as true. One his central aims, therefore, is to discover how men and women govern themselves and other by the production of truth. Discourse are not once and for all subservient to power or rise up against it, any more than silence are. We must make allowance for the complex and unstable process whereby discourse can be both an instrument and an evoke of power, but also an hindrance, a stumbling block, a point of resistance, and starting point for an opposing strategy. Discourse transmit and produce power. It reinforces it, but also undermines it and exposes it, renders it fragile, and makes it possible to thwart it. Okay, next to the panoptic machine. The panoptic machine. The panoptic is a type of prison building designed by Jeremy Bentham in 1787. At the center of the building is a tower that allowed the governor to observe all the prisoners in the surrounding cell without the prisoners knowing whether or not they are in fact being observed. According to Bentham, the panopticon is a new mode of obtaining power of mind over mind in a quality hitherto. Bentham's panopticon is therefore profoundly symptomatic, symptomatic, of a historical shift from the 18th century onward in method of social control. This is according to Foucault, a movement from punishment or enforcing norm of behavior through spectacular display of power, public hanging and torture, age, to discipline and for enforcing a norm of behavior through surveillance, a shift from exceptional discipline to one of generalist surveillance, the formation of what may be called, in general, the disciplinary society. The increasing number of celebrity surveillance magazines, such as Rival, Closer, Hate, and New, work in a similar way. Celebrities are monitored and scrutinized, especially in terms of body size and sexual and social behavior for hours supposedly anonymous pleasure and entertainment. But again, the norm and standard that are used to criticize and ridicule celebrity are the same norm and standard that can be used to discipline us. Similarly, in makeover and talk show surveillance programs such as the Jerry Springer Show and the Jeremy Kylie Show and what not to wear, and 10 years younger advice is freely combined with abuse and ridicule as subject are encouraged often aggressively and to the smoke self-satisfaction of the presenters to embrace self-discipline in order to comply with currently accepted standard of aesthetic and behavior normality. The fact that we are on the other side of the screen does not mean that we are safe from the mind, to confirm ourselves safely outside of the panoptic machine. In the panoptic machine invested by its effect of power, which we bring to ourselves since we are a part of the mechanism. In this way, then he argues surveillance has become the dominant mode of the operation of power. Fanatism is a form of power organized around the norm in terms of what is normal or not, correct or not, in terms of what one must do or not do. It is a fundamental aspect of what he calls normalization. Okay, I think that's all for me about structuralism and post-structuralism. If you want to know more, I think you can search in Google or watch in YouTube or reading book about it. Okay, thank you for your nice attention, guys, and goodbye.